Hello fiends, welcome once again to the Vault. Today we're going to be talking about the latest in the Fantagraphics EC Artist Library series, and this one is KAMEN'S Calamity and Other Stories by Jack Cayman. In the past I've previewed these, but this one's actually out now, so you can get this one now through all the usual places. Fantagraphics Direct or Amazon or anywhere else that you buy books is going to have this. This was a really fun one to work on, and it contains all the later horror stories by Jack Cayman for EC, and also the complete collection of the Cayman Grimm fairy tales. And for a long time, EC readers, you know that they would lampoon, satirize, and skewer old fairy tales, or simply stories in a fairy tale setting, a kingdom with a cruel king, very kind of twisted Disney from them. And the later Grimm fairy tales were actual Sleeping Beauty or Snow White or Little Red Riding Hood, and they're all here. But the cool thing about this is that it's the later Cayman horror stories. You might have heard my cat just run by. Hey girl, it's okay, you can be in the video. So where was I? KAMEN'S Calamity. The title story is a bona fide EC classic, and it's one that was pretty prestigious for Jack Cayman because none of the other EC artists had a story that told their own origin. It's satirical and it's tongue-in-cheek, of course, but this is the story of how Jack Cayman went from being a cheesecake love comic artist to being a horror artist. And the back cover, speaking of cheesecake, something bad is surely going to happen in this story. You just know it. But I also wanted to point out from a personal perspective that this panel comes from the first EC comic I ever bought when I was 12 years old. I've talked about it in other videos, but Tales from the Crypt number 41. And I've now had the pleasure of writing about 3 of the stories out of the 4 in that issue, this being the last one, Current Attraction. I love the fact that I've gotten to write about 3 of the 4 stories in the first EC comic I ever bought. This is the 3rd time I've written about Jack Cayman. These were the first 2 volumes that I wrote introductions for on Cayman. This is actually the first book in the EC Artist Library series that I wrote an introduction for. So it's made me a bigger fan of Jack Cayman. I appreciate his work much more. I've mentioned in a couple of these introductions that Bill Gaines, in an interview in 1969, referred to Jack as everyone's unfavorite. But as admin of the EC Fan-Addict Club on Facebook, I can tell you that Jack Cayman is very well regarded now. And I think it's his quintessential 1950s mid-century aesthetic, that kind of man in the gray flannel suit, but something is about to go horribly wrong aesthetic that Cayman had. These were his earliest horror stories for EC. And these were his earliest science fiction stories for EC. And as you can see, these are both fairly slim volumes. The latest Cayman collection is a much thicker volume. And this one, Caymen's Calamity, the reason for that is, again, it has the complete Cayman Grimm fairy tales. There were 13 Grimm fairy tales that EC did. 11 of them were illustrated by Jack Cayman. They're all here. His later horror stories. So you get into some really fairly gruesome stuff, and even the things that happen off camera, as it were. He is able to convey that there's some pretty sickening things going on here. Once again, under that conformist 1950s facade, there were some horrible things happening, and Jack Cayman was great at conveying that, illustrating that, kind of communicating the seedy underbelly. And the other thing that's in here that makes it a thicker volume is there's a lot of bonus material by John Elton, Frank Bull, Bill Fraccio, Rudy Palace, and Leonard Starr. So we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but the artists that didn't have enough to warrant a full volume or even to collect a volume of that stuff, thematically, if it fits with one of these collections, there's bonus material. And in the case of the story by Bill Fraccio, it's from the first issue of Crypt of Terror, which soon became Tales from the Crypt. And it was one of the stories that was dramatized in the pilot episode of the Tales from the Crypt TV show for HBO. So it's perhaps more well known from that than it is from the original printed story, but it's in here. So a lot of good bonus material. I had the pleasure once again, as I've said, of writing the introduction, and Happy Boy was one of Jack's nicknames in the story Kamen's Calamity. He went from Happy Jack to Horror Jack. So Happy Boy Cayman to Horror Boy Cayman. Great early picture of Jack with his wife and their son Bart, and that was provided by Dean Cayman, who also provided original art for some of these. So as I talked about in the video for 3 for the Money, a collection of Cayman crime stories, there are some art upgrades here from what you're used to in the EC Library sets, because Dean Cayman allowed the original art to be scanned for these volumes. So I asked the EC Fan-Addict Club members to let me know if there are any questions they had, and I did get a few before setting up the phone here to do a video. And Mark asked if this would be the last Cayman volume. Yes and no. It is the last full collection of Cayman stories, but there is more Cayman material to come, and I'll be honest, I don't know if it's going to be collected in one volume or if it's going to be collected in a volume of multi-artists from the New Direction era. We'll see. I just gave you a hint as to what it is. I was asked the same question about an upcoming Davis volume. Will it be the last Davis? And the answer there too is yes and no. There will be more Davis material coming, so wait and see for that. And that goes into a question that I got from Glenn, is how many volumes and what's next? So this is volume 36 of the EC Artists Library series. There will be approximately 44 in total. It was originally going to be 40-ish, but then the scope changed a bit because pre-trend stories started to be included, even pre-trend stories that weren't in the EC Library volumes. And this bonus material from other artists being collected expanded the scope a bit. So probably looking at maybe 45 books total now. And again, this is volume 36. And what's next after this, and it's already been advertised, you can see the cover now on online, wherever you order your books. But Foul Play and Other Stories illustrated by Jack Davis. It's got an appreciation by Grant Geisman, and it's got, again, an introduction by yours truly. So looking forward to that. And then after that, there will be another Wallace Wood collection. And I can't tell you everything that's going to be in it, but I know that it will include his later, really stellar, some of his best science fiction stories. So there's more to look forward to. And last but not least, Miguel asked, will they reprint the earlier out-of-print volumes? The answer is yes. They've already started doing that. So 50 Girls 50 and Other Stories by Al Williamson was the first one to get a reprint. And then Came the Dawn and Other Stories by Wallace Wood has been reprinted. So those 2 volumes already have second printings. And there are more to come in the next year. Stay tuned for more about that. Thank you very much. If there's anything else you'd like to see or know about, just let me know. I have already been asked to do a video on the East Coast Comics reprints of the 1970s. And I incorporated that into another video, but that might warrant a video of its own. So stay tuned. And last, but certainly not least, I wanted to give another shout out to volume 35 in the series, The Bitter End and Other Stories illustrated by Reed Crandall, with an introduction by my good buddy John Gothold. We did a whole long half-hour video about Reed Crandall and also remembering our dear friend Roger Hill, who had a lot to do with not only this book, but so much of what we in EC fandom treasure and look forward to. And there is more to come. But I didn't do a video myself of this book like I normally do, but watch that video I did with John Gothold for more on this, more on Reed Crandall. And again, there's more to come. Cheers, Spa Fawn. See you next time.